The idea for me of starting some kind of news-related thing is not new at all to me. Back in my gaming days, which was back around the 2015 time period, especially as you can see right here, down here on the bottom, you can see that as soon as 2015, I was in the process of exploring some means of doing some kind of news-ish or blog-ish type of thing. Definitely not new. I know the dates on some of these are actually wrong. None of these were done in 2023. It's possible that these were ones that I had unpublished because I did eventually completely unpublish this page on Blogger, which I called the GTA help page. I think I sometimes jokingly called it the G2A help page. But the whole idea of this page was to share how to do certain things in GTA 5 and Rockstar Games and whatnot, as well as whatever updates came along the way. So like this one, for example, I discussed how to create the Rockstar Games account and stuff back in the day. I think the process might be different nowadays, but this was a different time, and I did all kinds of stuff like that. I think there were a few spots where I actually did like an update, so let me see if I can find one here. Okay, so this is actually a really good whole selection here. This one, I remember specifically doing this article. In the base game, there was a different kind of dot back in the day, or whatever that they used. I preferred the crosshair at the time, so I showed how you could change the crosshair for the gun aiming. So I showed how you could change the gun aiming crosshair in the game. And then you also have this one here that's actually like an update. So there was a lot of there's always been a lot of like modding and stuff that happens in GTA, and I did this article here discussing different things that happened in the day with that, like discussing that ban in that case. This was, again, long before I got into retail. This was back at a time when I was doing video gaming specifically, and these days obviously it's a little bit different. So if we come back over here to the blog and just kind of show you what it looks like now, obviously this is a totally different blog page, but this is the one I started in 2019 along with my YouTube channel. But of course, back when I originally started, I didn't actually like immediately start diving into the blog stuff too much. I put a lot of emphasis initially on doing videos specifically on the YouTube channel. But I think as about 2021, I started publishing to a popular news website that I'm not going to identify because I don't think they deserve the publicity for the bullcrap they pulled on me. But I started there doing like a lot more articles, and of course it did end up garnering quite a bit of attention. Eventually, when they did finally start screwing with me, that's when I shifted over here to the blog page. And unfortunately, now that they did some kind of major platform reset, my account over on the other page is completely gone and will never be recovered. Probably not anyway. Highly unlikely, because the email I had associated with that account I do not have access to anymore, and they won't let you change the email address on your account, or at least they wouldn't let me do it back at the time I used that website. I put more emphasis on the articles, even after that, doing usually at least one article per month, and as much as, maybe 4 or 5, even 6, maybe even more than that sometimes, articles a month. Now we're over here in the Google Drive, and we're in the 2024 folder for me. It was in 2024 when I started experimenting with going some form of print route. My initial concept was to call it Optopolis Monthly, so it was never going to be called Cheyenne's Retail Minute back then. And basically, I would just have all the articles that I do on the blogger in a print format. So there you can see here that this is a sample I did on 8.5 by 14. That's the legal paper. And when I did it this way, what I realized is that just a single article from my blog page kind of takes up a lot of space. So if I do a whole article, it can pretty quickly add up, and then you start having lots and lots and lots of pages, which can add up. Of course, if you're doing it back to back, it might only be 2 to 3 sheets, since this is 5 pages overall, but it still is going to make it kind of pricey, and it's kind of hard to do this really effectively. What I found with doing my blogger page is that I can't really like roll a whole bunch of topics out efficiently and quickly if I also want to talk about the history. If I'm okay with letting go of the history, then I can actually do a little bit more, right? I can actually do a lot more topics. I can really focus on what I actually observe, which is highly unlikely to be it's not going to be super wrong, I should say, which is highly unlikely to be super wrong or anything like that. It's going to be literally what I can see with my eyes. Versus doing it this way, there's a lot more likelihood of a small error or even maybe a little more significant error happening that because it's printed, I can't go back and fix it. That's the pitfall from my end of printing. I can't fix an error. I can only later go and say, hey, I made an error on this topic or whatever. With the online thing, I can always easily unpublish an article and rewrite it or whatever I have to do to get it straight. Which is very important if I'm going to be doing history, because it's very likely there's going to be something I either need to add or clarify or something at some point, just because I am a single person and there's only so much I can do. So that's where in the print version, that's where I'm focusing on just the current event, because that part is very unlikely for me to get it like absolutely wrong and probably not even a little bit, at least based on what my eyes can see, right? Different eyes might see different things depending on your position relative to the topic at hand or what have you, but maybe that's a topic for another day. Because I realized that this format that you see here was just not going to work, I ended up just putting it on the sidelines and forgot about it basically for quite a long time. Like I said, I discovered that doing it this way was just not feasible. There's no way I would be able to cover every single topic that I wanted to cover efficiently and effectively without getting things wrong. And it just took up way too much space to be able to do it this way in such a small amount of space. So I put it on the sidelines, and I don't think in 2025 I even messed with it. And I pretty much forgot about it in a way until the start of this year when I was scrolling through the Instagram stories of people I follow. Now, I follow a number of people in the retail community on multiple different platforms, and that includes Jeremy's Retail. Jeremy's Retail does videos and stuff out in the, I believe, Pennsylvania area primarily. And he ended up doing a story post back in January where he had called it The Retail Record. And it was basically a newsletter type of thing discussing some of the retail things he had seen happening out in his area. And as soon as I looked at that and read through it, it's like, I could probably do something like that. It just finally clicked in my head that not only was that the way forward, that was actually possible. I don't think that idea was new necessarily to me. I think I did initially think of it back at the time in 2024. But in 2024, my mindset was, well, I want to report on the history too. But then when I read his thing, that's when it clicked in my mind. That's what I could do, is just focus on the current event at hand. Now, I think in the original one he did, it was kind of focused on slightly more mainstream topics, but that were impacting his area. So he did this article about Macy's, a brief thing about GameStop, Value City Furniture, Belk, things that are happening kind of out near his area, sort of, but not necessarily focused on one particular thing. And in the last month, I would say, I think he's done like 2 of them now where he's just kind of posted little updates. Now, of course, this format is very different. This is like a 1-page format where he's just doing a very brief thing talking about it. For me, I'm actually doing kind of a multi-page type of deal where I have the front and back of a legal paper covered. And, that's just, it's definitely a difference between my format and his. And of course, his is primarily for doing this stuff on the Instagram stories instead of necessarily doing it in a print format. Either way, that was kind of the last straw towards doing it in this manner. With that being said, though, I'd like to finish off on this bit right here. This is the January edition. This was the initial edition that I put out to just kind of test the water, so to speak, and kind of get a lay of the land, so to speak, see if it was even feasible. Once I did, and once I also ended up getting a little bit of help from Twinkle Twinkle to get the last edition out, ultimately I decided to make it quote-unquote official of just keeping the newsletter going, and I fully anticipate doing that for quite a long time. Something that's been of interest to me is that I haven't really seen someone go from an online blog to a print blog before. The closest I've seen is like Oil City News up in Casper as part of Cap City here in Cheyenne. Oil City actually launched their own print edition after starting online, but of course that's more on the side of being like a news entity versus someone who's just kind of writing about things that are happening. A lot of times what I've noticed is that people go from a print blog, like especially back in the day when the internet was getting more popular, it seems like a lot of people went from like a print blog to some kind of online blog, but not necessarily the other way around until now. And if they are out there, maybe they are, I have not found them. So if you do know of any that have gone from online to print, let me know, but I have yet to find any that are like that. Something I did too while I was writing this edition was actually go out and have it kind of peer reviewed. So I'm still doing that to some extent, a little bit less so now, but ultimately I showed a lot of different people and took in their insights and things like that. So there was one local shop that suggested having some kind of reference to me that's just plainly and blatantly obvious. So that's where I added this bit in here where it says a brief retail happenings in Cheyenne, a brief preview of retail happenings in Cheyenne as observed by Optopolis. Some of the other suggestions, have been just general overall improvements. So there's like the QR code idea that I got where, at the end of the day, there's a number of people who do use media who might like to be able to find out more information online. So I put in a QR code for that. So one thing that I do absolutely have to do is find a way of sustaining this journey, right? It's not exactly free to go print. It costs money for every single page I print. So that's where when we actually go over here to the February edition, I actually had this entity basically donate to me. I end up just saying they sponsored it, and that's how it is. Something that I've realized is that the Optopolis stuff has gotten to a point where I'm pretty much spending a full-time job, if not more than a full-time job's worth of time on doing this. And unfortunately, that means I have to find some shifts to kind of better sustain that. That of course doesn't necessarily mean I'm looking to become rich or anything like that. For me personally, I'd be kind of happy just living within my means, so to speak. But that being said, there is kind of a minimum cost of surviving in this world, and I am exploring different means of kind of funding that. So one thing I may also do in the future is offer some form of service to like do photos or what have you of a particular place. So I've actually been kind of experimenting with how I would go about doing some kind of like street view photography type of thing. So as you can see here, if I go to, I might be in the wrong program. One second. So as you can see, when I go into a particular projection, this allows me to see this as street view, and I can actually rotate around this whole spot and see what's happening. You can actually see my tripod there, even though it's kind of a discombobulated mess due to the nature of a 360 camera. But while this is an action camera and it's not necessarily the best camera ever on the market, it certainly has some pretty good capability to take reasonably decent photos. So you can actually see right here, you can actually read the text on the wall pretty well, considering the size of the sensor and everything like that. What I can do is actually import all these into a third-party platform that allows me to make a street view tour. And then when I do that, you can actually go into Google Maps and click on the blue dots, and you can actually go clicking onto other images. Obviously, it's not going to work right here because I'm in my offline software that's not meant for necessarily making actual tours, but it's still the same kind of idea. I've been experimenting with this for about a month now, and I've actually kind of found some success. Unfortunately, with this particular instance, I made a bad decision, a poor decision. I know, let's go to poor decisions now. I made a poor decision. I put my camera out here to see about maybe trying to do like an outside image too, just as kind of an experiment. And while I did get an outside image, what ended up happening was that my tripod fell over due to the wind blowing it over. It was kind of breezy, and of course, one gust of wind is more than enough to blow a monopod with a tiny tripod on it. That's pretty much what happened. I was hoping and praying that the wind wouldn't gust at that moment, but it did, and well, I'm working on the process of possibly getting that one the camera repaired or replaced or whatever they want to do, and I'm probably gonna buy actually I did buy a backup just to be safe in the future. And that's kind of just where things are at. In the future, something I would probably do is actually open this door, and I'd probably actually use my higher end tripod that's heavier and more sturdy, and just live with having to deal with the legs and everything like that. Of course, this is something that I will probably do under a different name versus using Cheyenne's Retail Minute, because obviously the purpose of the Retail Minute is not to make street view tours. The purpose of it is to share retail happenings in Cheyenne, and maybe the occasional tiny little update on me or the Retail Minute or whatever. But this is one of the things I'm trying to see if maybe this can help better fund everything that I do here. I don't think there's too much else I can say other than I will be having Cheyenne's Retail Minute release about once a month. I plan on doing it once a month, about mid-monthly for now. Currently, I'm at a point where I need to basically be printing a minimum of 250 to 300 copies. In the future, that could go up, especially if I have copies available at other locations. Everything else being said, though, I hope you've enjoyed and maybe found some value in this video, just kind of discussing where this idea kind of coalesced from. I don't know, hope maybe you'll be able to find a copy around Cheyenne. Hopefully before too much longer, I will be having a way for some of you to maybe actually get a print copy in the mail while also supporting the journey or something like that. I'm kind of working on setting up some form of a Patreon page for that, because that seems like the best way to do it, and that's also just what I'm familiar with. Of course, I recognize that there are some of y'all who are maybe not as technically savvy, that maybe you need a different means of kind of taking care of that situation, so I'm not sure how I will do that yet necessarily, but that's kind of where things are at. Of course, if you have any suggestions, thoughts, comments, criticisms, whatever about this, by all means let me know in the comments. I want to improve, obviously, and I want to kind of offer the best thing that I can here to show what's happening in Cheyenne and just overall kind of help people learn about what there is actually going on in Cheyenne. Something I will say before I finish this off is that I've realized there's a lot of things that just for one reason or another don't get into the normal mainstream media necessarily, and there's definitely a lot of things where people are like, there's nothing that ever goes on in Cheyenne, yet every single month there are places that are either opening, moving, or closing. Plus there's always events happening at the individual places themselves. So anyway, with all that being said, I'll talk to you in another video, hopefully soon. Until next time, peace out, everybody.